Hello? Hello?
Podcast Network Asia.
It's kind of like story time, and that's why I sent everybody popcorn. So let me see. I want to see who ate the most popcorn because I sent this yesterday. Bernz! Oh my gosh.
Grabe, bagsak kayo sa marshmallow test.
That was exactly what I was thinking.
So Abraham didn't have a blind faith. He was certain. And he has a faith in God's promise. God made it clear to him. Kaya di ba sinabi ng Amos chapter 3 verse 7, God does nothing without revealing His plan to His servants.
Abraham received a lot of promises and he didn't see its fruition. In fact, one of the promises that Abraham received was fulfilled in Jesus' time.
To what God compared the number of Abraham's offspring? Okay, stars and
Stripes.
stars.
Ano ba?
I'm just really happy that Tina Ryan is back because look at her. Hey, Tina girl. Hi, Doritos. Come on in. Welcome to the Narrow Door Podcast. My name is Sam O. And let's say hello to all of our friends here today. Bernz O. Kaasi he's founder and creator and host of Unboxing Catholicism, which you can find online. And Brother J. Paul Hernandez is lay preacher at the feast. Instructor Abby Sagid joining us once again from New Heaven and New Earth Trinity Church of Jesus. How is everybody doing? Long time no see. That's an inside joke because we just hung out a few days ago.
For Insta Abby's birthday.
Happy
Happy birthday,
birthday!
Insta Abby.
Thank you so much, guys.
Kamusta po yung celebration natin ng birthday?
Masaya ako.
Parang pilit na pilit yung, kita mo yung itsura ni Insta Abby, parang, masaya ako. Parang napilitan siya
Kasi
sabihin.
nabully niyo ako eh.
Us? When? What are you talking about?
Jay po lang yun.
Si Brother J po lang yun. Nahiya lang si Insta Abby, i-single out siya, guys.
Oh.
Kaya, inano na niya, generalized.
Well, I'm really glad though that we not only got to meet up and spend time, but yeah, we celebrated your birthday together a day in advance though, but still. And we have to talk about Bernz's mom's kimchi, guys.
Guys,
So, okay. All right. Okay. Tina, do you want to get us started?
I just want to say, Tita Beth, I'm like your number one fan.
Wow. By the way, guys, my mom and I have been trying Korean cooking kasi ako into K-drama, Korean language, and everything Korean. Mom ko naman can't keep up with the anyong haseyo and all of that. So siya sa cooking department siya nag-excel, no? So she's been trying Korean stuff. And kimchi is something that she's been trying to master. So she made her own paste.
Wow.
And yung last kimchi na binigay ko sa inyo nung nag-meet tayo, syempre proud ako. Ako yung naghalo nun. Taga-halo lang.
Wow!
Tapos yung mom ko yung naghiwa.
Maraming
And
achievement.
then, yung di ba magga-gloves ka, tapos hahalo-haluin. So, ako yung naghalo-halo nun, together with her.
Si Insta Abby, di ba, first time niyang mag-kimchi?
Yes, that was
Kimchi
my
pa ni
first
Tita
time.
Beth.
Oh my gosh, that's right. So Insta Abby's first ever kimchi was the one made by Bernz's mom, si Tita Beth.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
I never
Oh,
tried
mas
before.
And you
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah. Siyempre, yung pawis ni Bernz nandun eh.
Secret
Guys,
ingredient pala yun.
At ito pa, inside story. We were making that kimchi while watching the episode of the Narrow Door podcast. O, di ba? So, guys.
Ayun naman pala. There you go. That's the secret, guys.
Kaya inspired. Oo.
Uh-uh.
Yay!
Okay, but that's so cool. Tita Beth, thank you so much. Beth the Beth namin ang iyong kimchi.
I'm
Galing
encouraging
na
her to do more. So, na-try namin yung mga banchans.
Sam, dahil sa joke mo yun, baka unfollow ka ng mami ni Bernz. Okay na eh. Fan na
Wala
ako,
ID si
Sam.
Mami.
Okay, unfollow na ulit.
Uy, mabenta sa akin yung joke, Sam. I'm with you.
Oh
Gusto
no,
ko rin yan.
kung mabenta sa'yo, it's not that good. Kasi yung ang babaw ni Tina, guys. Sobrang babaw. We love having you on the show, Instabby, okay? But I just want to ask, where is Insta Harry? Because we're feeling like we're a little abandoned over here.
Sinamahan niya si
Strong
Pastor
word na yun,
Dennis eh.
What's the ganaps over there?
Yes. Insta Harry is very busy right now because we are going to have a webinar series Yes, entitled Testimony on Prophecy and Fulfillment of Revelation, God's New Covenant. So dito sa series na to, we will be discussing about the book of Revelation from chapter 1 to 22, cover to cover. And it will start on October 18.
Grabe.
Yes.
Wow.
Actually, in charge doon.
Kaya naman
Yes.
Sige, tawagan
wonder.
natin si Harry everyday. Yun talagang Harry. Kailangan ko lang kausap mga 2 hours. Yung stressin natin, di ba? Okay, I know what to do tomorrow morning.
Pero hindi siya yung magtutalk doon, ha? So beginning from
Pero
chapter
siya puro
1, it will be presented, of course, by Chairman Lee. And the following chapters will be discussed by our 12 tribe leaders. So hope you guys watch it. Yes.
Okay. This is interesting. But yes, you guys have tribe leaders. You have 12 tribes. Like, this is the structure of your church.
Yes.
So it's going to be Chairman Lee and the tribe leaders who will be sharing all of
Yes.
this. Wow. October 18. Okay. Good stuff. Okay. Insta Harry, you are excused. Okay. So
Hindi. Dapat ma-practice siya. Paano siya mag-aasawa kung hindi niya mapagsabay?
Pero I have a question. Because you guys have been doing the webinars now for some time. Like we've all been
Yes.
to a few of them. And now
Mhm.
you're saying that you guys are testifying the entire book of Revelation. And we're doing our own. But parang lahat tayo nagre-Revelation series. Ano ba yan? Parang
hindi.
we're all like
Kasalanan mo yan,
into
Sam, eh.
eating into each other's content, guys. Okay. And so we're doing our own here. And if the book of Revelation is already being testified in your online series that's going to happen on the 18th, I guess my question is like, should we just go there and listen to that series instead? May katuturan pa ba itong ginagawa natin?
Of course, you can watch the Revelation series. Pero for me, mas ma-appreciate natin yon kung ipagpapatuloy natin itong podcast na panoorin talaga. Kasi mas magiging madali sa atin na maunawaan lahat ng i-discuss. Kasi from chapter 1 to 22, 404 verses, lahat ng yun, in detail talaga siya i-discuss. And dahil ang Revelation is a prophecy, so napakaraming figurative language doon, napakaraming parables doon. And I think magagawang matulungan yung mga listeners natin para maintindihan yon kung manonood sila sa podcast. Yes.
Wow.
All right.
Grabe.
So may katuturan pa pala to, Mama.
Of
Sobrang
course.
ganda na sinasabi
Tuloy
ni Abby, umiiyak na si Tina eh.
All right. So, yes, we are still very much on this road to Revelation. It's a series that we started with the objective of understanding the testimony on the book of Revelation that is coming from New Heaven and New Earth. And we are in the covenants, Insta Abby, right? So today you are going to talk about God's covenant with Abraham. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I noticed that, in the past episodes where we talk about this stuff, it's kind of like story time. And that's why I sent everybody popcorn. Because I feel like, once Instabby gets started, we can bust out the popcorn and just kind of listen and enjoy what she's talking about. So let me see. I want to see who ate the most popcorn because I sent this yesterday. Bernz! Oh my gosh. I think you.
No, I gave some to Mom. Hinati ko siya.
Ako din, hinati ko.
Grabe, bagsak kayo sa marshmallow
Right.
test.
That was exactly what I was thinking. This is like the adult version of the marshmallow test. This is like the adult version of the marshmallow test. And okay, I guess everyone did pretty good. Instabby,
Thank
I'm
you,
sorry.
Sam.
You're most welcome.
Nakakaingit.
I know, I'm sorry, Instabby. I couldn't send you popcorn also because you're going to be the one talking, obviously. But I'll send you something else that's better. Okay?
Corn.
Okay.
I-pop mo na lang daw.
Kimchi ni Tita Beth.
Sure.
Hindi, si Tita Beth na lang padala natin kay kay Abby para unli.
Nagagawa ng kimchi sa NHNE.
This smells so good, guys. This is 3
Wow.
flavors: rosemary and basil, truffle parmesan, and herb de Provence, which is obviously not how you pronounce it. So please don't say that, especially around a French person. But yes. Ooh. Okay.
Thank
so,
you. Enjoying it.
It's
Okay,
Abby.
it's Abby. We're ready.
Okay.
And notebooks ready.
Okay. And to our Doritos, if you have Bible there, please read along with us kapag nagbasa tayo ng scriptures para mas masaya yung ating Bible story for today.
Yay!
Okay, before we go to Abraham, something that we need to understand sa lahat ng mga episodes natin in this series patungkol sa covenant, the work that God had been doing is the process that we called creation and recreation. This is the underlying theme in the Bible from beginning to the end. God created man in his image, and everything he created was good. But then what happens? God made a covenant with Adam, but it was broken. Sin entered, so God and man were separated. And God has to begin again. At sino yung pinili niya? Next, he chose Noah, Adam's ninth descendant, someone who is righteous in the eyes of God. And through Noah, God needs to warn his people about the destruction that is going to take place. Unfortunately, people didn't believe. At ilan lang yung naligtas? 8 were saved. And through him, God begins the work of recreation using the small group that we called the remnant seed. And God once again made a covenant with Noah. So pang-ilang covenant na to? Pangalawa. But sin entered again through his son Ham and grandson Canaan. And as a result, God has to do recreation once again. And he's gonna start with one person. At eto na yon, si Abraham. So can you see the pattern inside the Bible? God constantly starts with one person to recreate his kingdom here on earth. And now, let's talk about Abraham. Sino ba si Abraham? Sino si Abraham?
Father of faith.
Yes.
Father of
Ano pa?
many nations.
Yes. Father of
So,
many nations.
Diba siya yung may 7 children? Ito na naman tayo sa 7
J. Paul,
children.
kakanta daw si J. Paul.
Many children. Dati din yung nalirinig ang pakinig ko sa mga bata. Father Abraham has 7 children. Mali pala. Many children. Yung totoong
Kasi
lyrics.
tayo children tayo eh. Children tayo ni Abraham, di ba?
Apo, yes. So tama yung mga sinabi nyo. 10th generation siya from Noah, descendant of Shem, son of Terah, father to Isaac, uncle to Lot, and husband to Sarah.
Alright.
So his name from Abram na, yes, sinabi nyo, to Abraham, napalitan yon. Abram means exalted father. And Abraham means father of many nations. And of course, right? Kasi tinawag din siyang father of faith. So to be called as father of faith, what kind of faith pleases God na ipinakita kaya ni Abraham? Kung bakit siya sinabi na father of faith. It says, without faith, we cannot please God. So alam natin na napakahalaga ng pananampalataya. And in Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1, sinabi doon, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Yes. First, when God commanded him to leave his country, his people, his father's household, and go to the land God will show him, he obeyed God. It doesn't mean he just left and obeyed with blind faith. He knew God's promise. Alam niya. Yes, he didn't know where he was going, but he knew that there was a land there that he would later receive as his inheritance. So he did know that God wanted him to go there at alam niya kung bakit. Anong sabi ng Diyos sa kanya? I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. And you will be a blessing. So these are all promises of God. So when he was following God, he was not following him blindly. Kasi ito yung madalas naiisip ng mga tao, sumunod siya ng bulag. Pero ang totoo, hindi. He knows the promise exactly and he follows accordingly. We have to do the same. We should know exactly the promises of God inside the scriptures, especially at the time of the second coming. Why? Para maging tiyak tayo sa pananampalataya na meron tayo. Katulad ng isang kontrata, it's very dangerous if you do not know kung ano yung pinipirmahan mo. Paano natin din malalaman if we are really keeping the covenant if we do not know the content of the covenant in the first place? So Abraham didn't have a blind faith. He was certain. And he has a faith in God's promise. God made it clear to him. Kaya di ba sinabi ng Amos chapter 3 verse 7, God does nothing without revealing His plan to His servants. So pinapaalam ng Diyos pauna pa lang kung ano yung plano niya. At ito'y binigay niya kay Abraham. Ano ba yung pangako ng Diyos kay Abraham? Question. To what God compared the number of Abraham's offspring? Yes.
Sa stars po.
So stars. Yes, tama. May isa pa.
Ano mo nalaman niya,
Si Tina, masasagot yan ni Tina. Ng classmate kong si Tina, kaya niya sagutin yan.
Yes, stars. Tapos may isa pa. Kung saan hinalimbawa yung magiging descendants ni Abraham.
Clue, Instabi, clue.
Hindi siya kayang bilangin.
Mamaya ka na,
Bernz, not
Bernz.
you.
Just stop it. Wait,
Grabe siya yung classmate na ayaw magpa-recite to. Sorry, joke lang.
Okay, stars and...
Stripes.
Stars.
Ano ba?
Stars
Okay.
and... Sige na nga,
And-
Bernz.
What
What?
ba yan?
Huh?
May points. Top points.
Tapos ayun
What's
ako
your
sa star.
answer?
Joke.
What's your answer, Bernz?
Hindi ko sure eh. Dust?
Right.
Whoa! Bernz, ha?
Galing. Genesis, yes. Makikita natin yan.
Verse
Genesis chapter 13 verse 16. Sabi ng Diyos, I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth. So kung kaya mong bilangin yung dust, then your offspring could be counted. And Genesis chapter 15 verse 5, dinala sa labas si Abraham at sinabi ng Diyos, look up at the sky and count the stars. So kung kaya mong bilangin, so shall your offspring be.
Whoa.
And you know what? Yes, tama si Bernz doon. And you know what? There's a reason why God calls Abraham's descendants as dust and stars. Stars are in heaven that shine their light in the darkness. But the dust, remember yung sinabi ng Diyos kay Adam after siyang magkasala, from the dust you came and dust you will go. It means they are dead. Spiritually, they are dead. So they're no longer connected with God. So they are just like dust. So later on, makikita natin, there will be a difference sa mga tao na magmumula kay Abraham. There are people who are like stars in heaven who obeyed God as God's true children. And there are people din naman who referred to as a dust who betrayed God. So if we can check later on, Philippians chapter 2 verse 15 and if I'm not mistaken, Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 13, doon natin makikita yung stars and dust na referring to the people of God. So merong mga nag-betray, they are like dust. Then meron namang mga tao na naging masunurin, so they are like stars in heaven. At meron pang specific na promise na binigay ang Diyos kay Abraham. Matatagpuan natin to in Genesis chapter 15 verses 13 and 14. So ito babasahin natin. Genesis chapter 15 verses 13 and 14.
Guys, page 12. Ganun, nakala pare-pares ng Bible. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and ill-treated 400 years. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. Amen.
Amen. So ano yung pangako ng Diyos? His descendants will be strangers. Next, they will be enslaved and mistreated. Next, the nation will be punished by God and they will come out with great possessions. So ibig sabihin, before actually getting inside dun sa promised land na pinangako ng Diyos, yung Canaan, his descendant will be strangers in a foreign land. They will be mistreated or enslaved. That's 400 years in the future. And Abraham knew it was certain because it was God who promised. And that's faith. Faith on something that is yet unseen. What kind of faith we need to understand in this story? Kung makikita mo natin, God gives a promise. Nagbigay siya ng pangako, and there is a time to keep that promise, and there is a time to fulfill that promise. So alam natin later on, matutupad to through Moses. But the descendants, beginning from Abraham, they need to know, they need to understand, and keep that promise. But eventually, God has to fulfill it. How? Eventually, God will bring His people out from that land through Moses. Pero, napakahaba nung process. There was a long process before fulfilling that promise. Ngayon, ang tanong, nakapaghintay kaya, una, si Sarah, wife
Hindi po.
ni Abraham.
Parang
Yes.
feeling ko hindi.
Hindi, tama. Genesis chapter 16, nainip si Sarah. Kaya through her maidservant Hagar, nagkaroon ng anak si Abraham. Ito si Ishmael. Kasi it's been 10 years na nung lumipas after nung mangako ang Diyos kay Abraham na siya'y magiging father of many nations. 10 years na at nakakainip na yon para sa kanila. So si Sarah, binigay niya yung maidservant niya kay Abraham. And Abraham was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. Pero yun ba yung plano at kalooban ng Diyos?
Nope.
Of course not. Kaya in Genesis chapter 17, God confirmed His covenant with Abraham. At dito, as a sign of covenant, nagkaroon ng circumcision. Yes. Ilang taon kaya nun? Si Abraham.
Tanda na siya nun. Kasi 1
True.
year, as sabi mo kanina, plus 1
True.
year do sa age na sinabi mo kanina. So,
7.
ang sakit
87?
nun.
Sakit
He was-
nun? Ang tagal na ng healing nun?
He was
Guys.
he was 99.
When he
Mm.
got circumcised,
Yes, he was 99. At
And when
kasabay
he
niya,
circumcised others.
hindi, he circumcised others.
Grabe,
Kasabay
no?
niya yung anak niya.
Sana diretso
Ishmael.
pinata niya nun, no? Kasi
Yun.
imaginein mo, wala, anyway.
Ano,
It's
diretso
our-
what?
Yung clear pa eyes niya nung sinircumcise niya yung mga boys. That would really be painful. Really, it's painful
Okay,
to follow
moving
that.
forward.
Lahat ng lalaki sa buong tribe, lahat sila.
Lahat.
Gosh!
Including his son Ishmael. Yun yung sinabi ng Diyos din na everlasting covenant. Pero what kind of circumcision that God truly desires? Kasi merong spiritual circumcision. Yes.
Circumcision of the heart, according to St. Paul.
Yes. In Jeremiah chapter 4 verse 4 and Acts, right, Paul? Acts chapter 7 verse 51, sinabi doon, circumcision of the heart.
wow.
So ito yung dapat malinis. Di ba, circumcision means removing unnecessary part.
Right.
So ang pinaka ginugusto ng Diyos na malinis sa atin ay yung
Ay, ang
puso natin.
puso.
Ayan. So moving forward again, Genesis chapter 19 and 20, chapter 19 and 20, dito naman yung Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. At dito makikita natin anong klaseng puso meron si Abraham. He has a heart to save the people. Sodom and Gomorrah are full of sin. At alam natin yung story, nakipagtawaran dito si Abraham sa Diyos nung gusto na silang lipunin lahat ng Diyos. Anong sabi ni Abraham? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Then down to 45, 40, 30, 20, 10. Pero anong nangyari? May natagpuan ba ang Diyos na righteous? Wala. But God's heart is that actually, He is willing to save the entire place if there's even few of righteous people there. But there was none. Kaya sila ay nilipol. Genesis chapter 21, dito na pinanganak si Isaac. Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was barren. So, ibig sabihin, parang si Isaac, hindi parang, pero siya talaga isang miracle baby. And
It's like a
sinabi
menopause
ng
baby.
true, at talagang kahit before pa, nung 75 years old si Abraham, when God gave the covenant, barren na talaga si Sarah. Hindi talaga siya magkakaanak. Pero dito, nagkaanak siya. Yan, kaya miracle baby si Isaac. At tinawag siya in Galatians chapter 4 na born of a promise. So if you have time, please read Galatians chapter 4, kung di ako nagkakamali. Kasi merong difference doon between kay Ishmael at kay Isaac.
Yes. He is the son of promise.
Yes, promise and born of a slave, si Ishmael. And then Genesis chapter 22, dito na. Okay, nung 21, dumating na si Isaac, yung pinakahihintay niyang anak. Pero 22, ano yung nangyari? God tested Abraham to sacrifice his only son, Isaac. And we know that Abraham obeyed. Sumunod siya. But there's more in this story. Abraham is called as the father of many nations. But who is the true father? It's God.
God.
Right.
Abraham had a son whom he loved most at kinakailangan niyang isacrifice. Who's God's only son? Jesus. At ano ang ginawa ng Diyos just to save the world? Sacrifice His son.
Sacrificed
Yes.
his only son.
Yes. So bakit ko to sinasabi? Kasi makikita natin even dun sa event na nangyari, sa time ni Abraham, meron nang nakatago dong plano ang Diyos. Kumbaga salvation plan ng Diyos na gagawin niya in the future. And isa pang trivia. Habang papunta sila dun sa
Brother Jay
bundok.
is shaking. Sorry.
Really?
That's Brother Jay's thing. Trivia?
Trivia.
Sorry,
Trivia.
Go ahead.
Tinignan ko yung sarili ko yung camera. Parang okay naman.
Oo nga. Sabi ko, ang inisip ko naman, lumilindol ba?
Oh my gosh. Sorry. My bad. Go ahead, please.
Ganyan ka eh.
Yes. So, nung papunta sila sa bundok, ito sacrifice na ni Abraham yung anak niya. Isaac was carrying the woods on his back. And what did Jesus do before his death? He carried the cross.
Oh my gosh.
He carried the cross. At isa pang napakagandang part dito. When Isaac asked Abraham kung nasaan yung ihahandog nila, ang sagot ni Abraham, God Himself will provide the lamb. God Himself will provide the lamb. So merong sumasagi sa isipan natin, ano yung lamb? May sumasagi ba sa isip mo? Lamb.
Jesus.
Holy Sheep
What's up?
Podcast.
Tama. Si Jesus. 'Di ba siya yung lamb na sinabi in John chapter 1 verse 29, the lamb who takes away the sin of the world. So pag sinabing world, this is pertaining din sa physical earth, pero tumutukoy ito sa mga tao. So nandun na yung salvation plan ng Diyos sa bahagi ng kwento na yon. At yun yung i-fulfill niyang Panginoong Yesus nung dumating siya 2,000 years ago. And in Genesis chapter 24, yes?
Meron pang isang trivia doon. The place where it happened in the Abbey.
Mm-hmm.
Mount Moriah is also in modern-day Jerusalem where Jesus was crucified in the same exact spot where Isaac was.
What? Yes, doon din.
May isa pang trivia. Pero hindi na seryoso.
Ang daming trivia dito.
Mahirap umakyat ng mountain na yun.
Mahirap.
Naakyat ko, ang hirap eh.
Seryoso ba? Naakyat mo?
You really been!
Wow.
Oo, tas dahil ako yung medyo capable, tas may mga nakasaklay na, binuhat ko sila eh. Parang, it's really hard. It's really hard, but it's fun.
Wow. Good for you, Brother Jay.
I know, right? Ako lang pupuntang heaven sa atin eh.
If this were a movie, cut to Brother Jay burning.
Yes, may isa pang trivia si Brother Bernz.
Hindi, kasi hindi na biblical yung trivia ko. I'm the reverse of Isaac. Baliktarin niyo yung surname ko.
Kasi!
Galing naman!
Oo nga, no!
Yeah, realize ko lang yun recently. Anyway, back to Insta Abby.
Oh my goodness. Oo nga, no?
Galing.
Walang ambag yung trivia ko, guys. Sorry naman. Sige na, Insta Abby.
Bernz,
Ayan.
Bernz, Isaac na tatawag ko sa'yo ngayon.
So after noon, ay Genesis chapter 24, nakapag-asawa na si Isaac, si Rebecca. And Genesis chapter 25, namatay na dito si Abraham. And there makikita natin na meron ng anak si Isaac, the twin, si Jacob and si Esau.
So,
Ang tanong, nakita ba ni Abraham na natupad lahat ng pangako ng Diyos?
No.
nope po.
Nakita lang niya na nagkaroon siya ng anak. Pero ang nakakatuwa doon, until the end, pinanghawakan niya yung promise ng Diyos. And then from this lineage, simula kay Jacob and Esau, aabot kay Moses, yun yung tatalakayin natin next episode.
She's really good at the
Yes.
cliffhanger thing, isn't she? Wow.
Yeah, ang daming ganap. Hindi natin kaya talagang
Yeah,
lahat.
super rich.
Super dami.
I just want to say that although that was maybe like a kind of lengthy discussion, we're really just skimming the surface, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because there are so many rich details in this story, and we're really just giving everyone like a skeletal framework
Yes.
of this story. It's really dense with detail.
Yeah.
Thank you, Insta Abby, for that overview. And thank you, Sam, for that word framework. I was looking for a term to use it. And I think framework is the
Wow.
right term.
Thesis.
Conceptual framework. Ne, kasi parang I want
Mhm.
to also ride on that point na nabanggit ni Insta Abby that Abraham received a lot of promises and he didn't see its fruition. In fact, one of the promises that Abraham received was fulfilled in Jesus' time. So that's a period of so many thousands of years. And I'd like to point out, no, hindi na natin to nabasa kanina due to the lack of time. Actually, God gave Abraham 3 specific promises. Nabanggit na ni Insta Abby yung iba dun kanina, no?
Mhm.
If we're gonna read Genesis 12, verses 1 to 3, sabi dito, do you like to read it, Tina? Or I'll read it na lang, no? Thou the Lord said to Abraham, hindi pa siya Abraham dito, Insta Abby, no?
Abram.
Go,
Mhm.
Abram pa siya, or Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great. Okay, these are very important details. Note to the land, great nation, make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who curses you I will curse. And by you all the families of the earth shall bless themselves. You know, it's very important, Genesis chapter 12, 1 to 3, because in just 3 verses, God used the word bless 3 times to confer the threefold promises that He gives Abraham. So ano yung promises niya? No, and it, again, sabi nga ni Insta Abby, overview lang to. I invite people to really read further on their own. Kasi nga may mga Bibles naman yung mga Doritos natin. No? So in Genesis 12, 1 to 3, the 3 promises were land. Okay, saan na-fulfill yung land na yan, no? Yun yung makikita natin na promise din ni Lord sa Genesis 15 na mapufulfill kay Moses na pag-aaralan natin sa susunod na episode sa Exodus 24. No, when Moses received the Mosaic covenant from God. And then, ang ganda lang kasi yung promises ni Lord, nagsimula lang siya as promises, then in-upgrade ni Lord. Parang game, no? May upgrade. In-upgrade niya sa status ng covenant. So where will you see na in-upgrade sa status ng covenant? Again, assignment for Doritos. For the first promise, yung land, in-upgrade siya sa covenant sa Genesis 15. Yung second promise, no? I will make your name great. Okay, if you're gonna look at the Hebrew meaning of that, that means God will establish His kingdom in Abraham's lineage, no? So saan na-upgrade yung promise na yun into a covenant? Genesis 17. And saan siya na-fulfill? 2 Samuel 7. Pag-aaralan din natin, ikikwento rin yan ni Insta Abby. And then yung final, ito yung sinabi ko kanina na isang promise na na-upgrade sa covenant na hindi na nakita ni Abraham kasi patay na siya noon, no? Genesis 22, dito na-upgrade yung promise na I will bless all the world through you, Abraham. Because there is now not just a kingdom, but a worldwide kingdom. And this is fulfilled in Jesus Christ in Luke chapter 22. How is it revealed? We will see that as we go through the road to revelation.
Parang
So, like,
parang may...
Ano?
Bigla na-stuck yung popcorn sa ano ko.
Maybe this wasn't the best idea, sending everybody popcorn and having to talk.
Sorry. Biglang may sumabit. Anyway, yeah. Galing.
I think like a curiosity for me in that whole story with Abraham was how the promise of God was a son, which was Isaac, but he actually allowed Ishmael to be born too. And I think a lot of us have this notion that everything that happens is the will of God. But clearly in that situation, Ishmael was not the will of God. Isaac was.
Isaac.
Right? So, and I think we touched on this before where you guys were talking, Bernz and Brother J. Paul were talking about permissive will. Like God has this thing called permissive will, right? So how are we to understand that? Because I think a lot of us just, everything that happens to us, whether it's good or bad, we just chalk it up to, well, that's the will of God. And I'm not sure if that is true. I think many people will look at something really bad in their life and say, ito yung will ni God sa akin eh. And I don't think it's true, is what I'm getting at actually.
Mm-hmm.
But can you kind of explain that in like what we see here with Ishmael and Isaac, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Kung nga kilala si Ishmael, guys.
Sino po? Sino?
Si Ishmael.
Go ahead, it's Abby.
Okay.
And Bernz also after.
Okay.
Yung sabi first.
Ang Diyos, yes, he has a good plan. Good plan. Merong mga bagay na nangyari na according to His will. Pero wag din natin kalilimutan na tayo as human, we have our own free will na gumagawa tayo base sa decision natin. And there are things na minsan yung resulta hindi maganda. And ang mga tao, madaling isisi sa Diyos, i-blame sa Diyos, ito yung kalooban ng Diyos. But it's not. Resulta yon ng ginawa natin. Pero if we can see the lesson mula doon, then God can turn it into a beautiful one. Kayang gawin ng Diyos yung maganda na yun kung nagkamali man tayo. Pero para sabihin na lahat na nangyari is gusto ng Diyos, will ng Diyos, no, it's not. Kasi meron tayong free will. Then Ishmael and Isaac, yung plano ng Diyos at ang will ng Diyos, magkaroon si Abraham ng anak kay Sarah. Hindi dun kay Hagar, dun sa maid servant. Pero dahil nangyari na to, even si Ishmael, blines ng Diyos, blines din siya ng Diyos. Sinabi yon nung nagtantrum si Hagar. Kasi inapi-api na siya. Emote siya.
Kasi nagselos eh.
Pero sinabi naman ng Diyos na i-bless din siya.
Yeah.
Si Ishmael.
Grabe no, yung teleserye story sa Bible pa lang. Umpisa pala ng Bible andun eh.
Totoo.
That's so true.
There's a lot.
You think the Kdramas are interesting? Read the Bible, guys. It's amazing.
So guys, si Hagar ang unang emotera na alam nyo.
Pero hindi rin kasi kasalanan ni Sarah eh.
Si Sarah nag-start.
Si Sarah nagsugo.
Siya ang sabi mo, Sarah led Abe to sin, to do idolatry. Ay, to idolatry, to adultery. Idolatry. Ibang sin pa binigay ko kay Abraham. Hindi naman yun, finorce niya eh. Pinilit niya kasi marupok siya, parang insecure si ate, ganyan. Ito lang ako, hindi siya naniwala kay Lord sa promise ni God. So yun.
Sige na nga kami ng mga babae.
Oo, tsaka pinagtawanan pa niya, di ba? Nung may dumalaw doon na 3 visitors, angels, and then narinig niya na, yun, muli nire-remind yung covenant ng Diyos, yung pangako ng Diyos, tapos tumatawa siya kasi, tanda-tanda na namin, magkakanak pa kami.
Ito, Tina, gusto mo ma-shock talaga, yung ma-shockit ka talaga. Yung ating Arab brothers and sisters come from Ishmael.
True.
The Arab nations, descendants of Ishmael.
Meaning, like Islam is from Ishmael's lineage, right?
Lineage.
Yeah.
Uh-uh.
Wow.
Bernz, what were you gonna say, Kanina, about the free will and permissive will and all that stuff?
Yeah. I almost forgot. Well, if you're gonna look at the Bible, medyo onting spoiler alert lang to. Kasi, there are books in the Bible na sa simula hindi natin magigets, no? Meron tayo yung Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, no? Parang ako dati when I was a new Christian, nung binabasa ko yun, naantok ako, nakatulog ako. Pero may purpose siya. Makikita natin sa dulo ng Exodus na i-discuss na-unbox natin sa susunod na episode. May on and off, no? Nagko-cool off si God tsaka yung mga tao na okay sila at one point and then biglang hindi na naman sila susunod sa covenant. So, ang tigas ng ulo. In fact, di ba, in sabi at one point, the Lord will describe Israel as stiff-necked people.
Stiff-neck,
Parang
yes.
ang titigas ng leeg ninyo, ah.
Bisayate ka sila eh.
Tina can relate.
Yeah. So, after Exodus 24, the Lord introduced, sorry, not Exodus 24, I think 32, no? Basta nung sa dulo ng Exodus, the Lord introduced a lot of new laws to really, para itama yung mga maling ginagawa ng Israel in terms of their worship. And then, doon nabuo yung Book of Leviticus, so, and Book of Numbers, no? Ay, makulit pa rin yung mga Israelita. Ginawa ng Lord yung Book of Deuteronomy. And this is like parang a rescue plan. Kumbaga, binigyan sila ng law kung saan tinolerate ng Diyos yung kanilang mga katigasan ng ulo. Paano yung tinolerate? I'll give you an example, divorce. Ba, alam naman natin that divorce was never in the plan of God in the beginning, di ba? But then, sabi nga ni Jesus Christ mismo sa Matthew 19:8, because of the people's hardness of heart, ang titigas ng ulo ng mga tao nung time na yun sa Israel, Moses allowed the giving of that divorce certificate. So what does that mean? God, in His wisdom as our Father, will never abandon us, so much so that He will stoop down to our level until we are ready to reach His level. No, so kumbaga, yung permissive will na sinabi kanina natin, it's not God changing His plan. It's God accommodating our weaknesses into His plans so that in the end, in His wisdom, in His mercy, we can attain the promise of being His children, provided that despite our weaknesses, we will continue choosing Him. Parang ways. Alam mo yung destination mo, hindi mo sinunod kasi makulit ka, paulit-ulit ka pa rin papupuntahin ni ways kung saan yung una mong pinin. So that's how I would look at permissive will.
Gigil ka, Bernz, today.
Sorry.
Hindi, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to think of something to add sa mga sinabi nyo kasi talagang it's really full of wisdom, really just ang ganda i-unpack ng Bible and it's really wala na talaga akong maisip basta God loves you. Let's move on.
Okay then, so let's do takeaway time. Who wants to start?
Maybe I'll just say it in a sense of leading our Doritos into an imagination. You know, God, when you were sinning, my dear Doritos, all of us, like when we were sinning in the middle of sin, God was there. So I'm just gonna ask you right now to just imagine your worst sin and the worst moment in your life. And God was not closing His eyes, but He was there with you. So just imagine the breaking of His heart because of His love for you. And you know, but he allows it and then figures out a way through His graces to lead you back to where you're meant to be. And He, as long as you're living, you know, God sends multiple moments of these graces to us. And you know, I love the story of just Abraham and the Jewish story, his descendants, because tayo yun eh. We belong to that. That is our story. And no matter how much we break God's heart, He will still pursue you. And He will unite you and will cleanse you. And that's why maybe you're thinking lang, for my dear Doritos, God will forgive me naman on the last moment eh. Why will I change my life? Na nagsasaya naman ako. That is a common argument of people. But think of it as not something that you're giving up. But imagine it as something gaining. Because God, as God's heart was breaking when you were sinning, imagine God celebrating with you from grace to grace, from glory to glory. Diba? So, Doritos, even if you don't see God's promise come true, obey as Abraham obeyed. Because at the end, His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen.
A to the men.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Tina, do you want to
No,
go?
'cause I'm just wondering kung nabuhay ako nung time nila Abraham. Kung ako rin ba yung baka ako rin sino ba yun? Si Sarah ba yung asawa
Sarah.
niya? Oo. 'Di ba? Nainip ba ako? I mean, how patient would I have been back then? And kung naubos yung pasensya ko, does that mean na nawalan ako ng faith kay God? Insta-Abby, ganun ba yun? Ganun na ba yun, guys? Dahil naubos na yung pasensya ko eh. So, ibig sabihin, hindi na ako naniniwala dun sa pangako ni God. Tama ba?
We love you and we support you. Yes.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
But it's not the end.
Yes,
Yes,
pero
not the
hindi. Oo, pwede pa
Yeah.
namang
Okay.
To begin again.
Oh.
nagsimula.
You know, if you read the Psalms, you'll see, na God's mercy is new every morning.
Oh yeah, I'm like learning that now. I mean, literally. Diba?
Oh, ba?
Okay.
Psalms ba yun? Bigla ako kinabahan. Psalms ba yun?
I mean, it's
Hanapin ko na
everywhere
sana
in the
Insta-Abby
Bible.
Paki-correct na lang si Brother J. Paul, Instructor Abby.
Hindi ako kinabahan sarili kong memory eh.
Ako, I think my takeaway is, well, aside from how I think Abraham was a rock star, because I think we've said this before, of all the people who were given the covenants, well, I guess aside from Jesus, until we get to that point, Abraham was the only one who was good. Like, he kept the covenant. I mean, he didn't see the fulfillment of those promises, but he did everything that God asked him to do. So
Like
he's
everything?
cool.
Like everything?
I mean, like, he's good in God's eyes. He didn't break the covenant, because that's really the thing that God can't forgive, I think, is when you break the covenant. Right? We're not saying Abraham was perfect and he was sinless.
Hagar.
Right, exactly. Like, he laid with Hagar, and they had a baby and all those things.
Pumayag naman siya, no? Loko-loko din.
Kaya nga, oo. So obviously, he wasn't husband of the year, but I think
Husband of the year.
but I
Parang wife of
think
the year si Sarah. Ganun.
I think what I liked about what Abby was discussing earlier was how Abraham was able to do all of those things because he knew the promise. And I think that applies to all of us. How are we going to keep God's promises and hold on to the promises if we don't know what they are? I think there are some parts of the Bible where the way it's written, it makes it out to be like they were hypnotized or something. They heard God's voice, there was no brain cells involved, and they were just hypnotized and they just followed. But how do you keep your faith when it's not based on understanding? Like, that's not sustainable.
Oo nga.
And I think we also call it like blind faith, diba? Parang mahirap yun eh. Like, you hit a wall at some point and you're gonna have to overcome that. But if your faith is not based on a really solid understanding, you probably will have some problems.
Yes.
So that is my takeaway. Like, I think with our faith life as well, we really need to understand what it is that we are holding on to. What are we looking forward to? These things have to be clear in order for us to obey to the very end. And I thank you.
Lala ko lang, sobrang favorite ko, bago magtuloy, sobrang favorite ko yung topic natin about Isaac and Abraham. I think umiyak ako nung ni-record natin to ni Insta Harry and Pastor D, because grabe Isaac story ko nun. So, For those who are listening.
Which topic was
hanapin
this?
Ito, Isaac.
This one.
Yeah, nung last year, mga first natin to, was, 'di ba, si Pastor Dennis din, sa son niya, ako kay Viv.
No, but what I mean is like, what was the title of that episode? Like, what was the topic exactly? I don't think we had a topic that went Abraham and Isaac, the story of whatever.
Listen to, start with episode 1. Wala.
Okay.
Basta, anyway, go ahead.
Okay, Bernz, takeaway time, Bernz.
Yeah, for me, I would also like to focus on Isaac. Hindi dahil kabaliktaran siya ng surname ko, but there's really something special in the life and faith of Isaac. Remember that he carried the wood going up to the Mount Moriah where he was about to be sacrificed. That means hindi siya bata na inosente na sunod-sunuran lang. He had his own will, he had his own mind. And if we're gonna study the ancient Jewish writings, there is a rabbinic tradition called Akedah, Aqedah. It means the binding of Isaac. And here, the rabbis of the Jewish tradition are saying, in their commentary, he was already in his teenage years, no? Matandang-matanda na si Abraham, pwedeng-pwede niyang hindi sundin, pwede siyang magpumiglas, pwede niyang bugbugin yung tatay niya, and yet, he chose to be obedient. He chose to trust in his father because he knew kung saan nagtitiwala yung kanyang tatay. You know, so I guess yun yung key takeaway ko dito, that obedience and trust are very, very important in our faith. And it's a challenge for all of us because God must be telling us to do something that we are not comfortable doing. God must be asking us to give up something that we hold so dear. God must be calling us to accept a truth that hurts. But even though it hurts, it sets us free. And all of these things call for surrender. And that's something that we have to reflect on. And finally, I would like to highlight the fact that Isaac was a young person. No? So for those Doritos who are saying, I'm young, I cannot do anything for the Lord, that I am just, saka na yan, kapag I live my life already, I've made a lot of mistakes, Let us remember what St. Paul said to Timothy in 1 Timothy 4:12. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Isaac was our model. Being a young person, he followed the will of God. And I want to encourage the Doritos to really look at the details of the Bible. You would notice as we go through salvation history that God has this way of favoring the younger person. No? For example, Isaac has 2 sons, di ba? Si Jacob and si Esau. Esau, the older, siya yung pinorte na who went wayward. And then the younger person was chosen. Also, yung anak ni Jacob, who was the hero in the story? It's the young person, Joseph. Okay? We're not saying that God plays favorites, but God is reminding us that sometimes we entertain pride and we let it rule our lives. God is telling us, okay, just as Isaac is a young person, so you, Doritos, no matter how young or old are you, you're being called to trust and obey the Lord and reap His promises, reap the rewards of His covenant in which we are living in now in this very day.
That really resonates with me because I tell myself that all the time. I am so young. What can I do?
Yes, Sam. I know you can relate to that.
Parang naghang ako.
Sino was raising your hand?
No, kasi guys, honestly, a question ko lang. I'm not familiar with the story of Isaac just yet. I have to read it again. Alam ba niya siya yung sa sacrifice?
Doon niya nalaman.
In fact, nagpatali
na sila
siya.
sa bundok.
Tali mo ko, Dad.
Nung tinali na siya.
Wow.
Kasi walang sacrificial sacrifice siya. But, kasaksakin na, the angel appeared and stopped.
Kaya siguro, ito personal reflection ko lang. Yung story pa lang ng, alam to ng Hudyo na Jews. Bakit di pa nila nung time na yun, ando na lahat ito as in simpleng yung everything that happened to Jesus. Hindi yan mahirap na context clues Alam mo yung bulag na bulag ka na lang talaga pag hindi mo nakita. But anyway, it's just a rant. Sorry. Yun lang.
That's
Okay.
cool.
End of sharing.
Insta
Thank you,
Abby?
guys.
Yeah, Insta Abby, do you want to say anything to wrap?
Yes. God told Abraham exactly what his promise, his plan, his purpose, and Abraham believed it. He knew and he believed it, and his faith was tested, yet he remained faithful and obedient to God, katulad ng sinabi nyo. Yun yung magandang makita natin, being faithful and obedient to God. And it was credited to him as righteousness. At ito yung sinabi sa Romans chapter 4,
Man.
verse 3. That's why he was called as the father of faith. So knowing this story is not simple, because we have to know what to believe in our time today. Kasi si Abraham, tiyak siya kung ano yung pangako ng Diyos, ano yung pinaniniwalaan niya. At yun yung sinunod niya hanggang sa huling hininga niya. Hindi man niya nakita lahat, pero he believed in the promise of God. At yun yung tinitingnan na faith ng Diyos at that time. Pero yun nga, merong time ng prophecy, merong time ng fulfillment. So how about our time today? So that's it po. Thank you, everyone.
In short, I win. I win today. Okay. No, just kidding. Okay, so thank you so much again, Abby, for sharing this lesson for today, which was all about God's covenant with Abraham. I hope our Doritos also picked up a few things today. And if you guys want to connect with us in any way, we are on social media. Hey, at the Tina Ryan, at Bernz, at J. Paul Hernandez, at I am Sam O. Insta Abby is on Facebook, but she isn't active. So you're going to have to catch her on the podcast. Like Insta Abby is the Narrow podcast exclusive.
No, you
Okay?
can write a testimonial sa Friendster niya.
For my face, you know. And you can email us too. Yes, the Narrow Door Podcast at gmail.com is the email. And if you guys want to check out Brother Bernz, Brother J. Paul, you have a New Earth, Tina Ryan, all the good details are in the show description. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see you on the next episode on this road to Revelation. Bye.
Annyeong!
Bye.
Bye.